Welcome, everybody. This is the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association October meeting. We have a large agenda tonight. We want to make special acknowledgement of the death of Henry Madej, and I'm going to turn to Carolyn Keith for that purpose. Carolyn?
Thank you, John. We just wanted to acknowledge the passing of our former president, Henry Madej. Henry led the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association for 10 years around the turn of the century and worked with Tom Gebhardt at UAlbany to found the Committee on University and Community Relations. Like many others, I had the pleasure of working with Henry and enjoyed his mentorship in advocating for our neighbors in Pine Hills. Henry's obituary was shared on the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association members Google group on both October 10th and October 16th and can be found on the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association Facebook page if you would like to learn more about all the many things that Henry was involved in. So we just want to say thank you, Henry, for all of your years of service and friendship. Thanks, John.
Thanks very much, Carolyn. Very nice. So we do have a busy agenda tonight. We had sent out to our Google group materials from the League of Women Voters on the ballot propositions, which are on this November's ballot. There are five that are statewide and two that apply just to the city of Albany. The city of Albany propositions, they start with they're Prop 6 and 7 because they come after, I guess, the 5 from the state. But Proposition 6 alters residency requirements for candidates for the Common Council, requiring 365 residencies prior to taking office and all during the term of office. Proposition 7 alters the powers of the Community Police Review Board, basically giving them independent authority to investigate conduct and also allowing community organizations to participate in advocating for and assisting people who have raised issues with police conduct. So I can't go through those in detail. I don't want to try to, but know that they are there. The 5 state propositions have to do with where incarcerated individuals are counted, basically constitutionalizing state law for reapportionment, ensures a right to clean air, water, and a healthful environment, eliminates the 10-day advanced voter registration requirement, allows for no excuse absentee balloting, meaning you don't have to be absent from the state or your county or be otherwise unable to attend. You just can choose to vote by absentee. And the last one has to do with the jurisdiction of the New York City Civil Court, raising the value of matters that can be litigated up there up to $50,000 from $25,000. So that's a real quick one, but know that we did send you the full piece from the League of Women Voters, and so we would like you to be aware of that and look at it sometime before you step into the voting booth in November, or before then, because early voting starts soon, right? I think next weekend or something like that. Leah's nodding yes. Okay, so there we are. So I'm going to start right away with our guest speakers. We have 3 of them tonight, all of them from the city of Albany. Joseph Coffey, the Commissioner of the Department of Water and Water Supply. He's going to talk about green infrastructure, the relationship to stormwater, lead water service replacement, and maybe also Lincoln Park, which was requested, although it's fairly well along. Jay LaVigne, the city forester, is here tonight. He's going to talk about obviously forestry matters, including tree inventory and other topics. And I believe that Frank Zeoli will be here to talk to us about the implementation of the DGS frequent offenders local law. So with that, I'm going to start right out with Joe Coffey. Joe, to you. You should be ready to go.
Thank you, John. Carolyn, I wasn't sure. I'm old enough that when you mentioned turn of the century, I wasn't sure if you meant the 20th or the 21st, but.
Well, so I have that problem too.
Yeah, just kind of putting it out there a little bit. I see a couple of familiar faces. I know Paul and Leah, I think, were probably at the last meeting of the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association I was at. And I'm embarrassed to say that I think that was in 2015. And I think at that point, we were actually talking about Quail Street Green Infrastructure Project and some drainage that we were looking at doing down on Elberon Place, leading down to Washington Park. So time flies, and I believe that was in the 21st century. So in any event, John asked me to speak a little bit about green infrastructure. And I can tell you that when we've done some presentations on green infrastructure, they normally go about 45 minutes to an hour. And usually that's been the sole topic of a neighborhood association meeting. So what I'd like to do is to tease a little bit tonight with you and just kind of go over some of the things that we're working on. And I'm kind of glad Jay's here, because a lot of what we have been looking at as we've migrated and learned from some of the earlier projects is that we're looking more at the use of tree pits and how that integrates more into stormwater management. And at the same time, that adds a lot to the objectives that Jay and the folks at DGS have about planting more trees in the city. So we kind of married the two areas there. So I want to see if I can share a screen here. What do I got here? Let me do this one. So can you all see that I've got up here? It's just a little bit of I got only 4 or 5 slides I want to show. And this was something I extracted out of what we did at the Neighborhood Association up in Melrose. And really what we were trying to look at doing, I think everyone knows, for green infrastructure with a combined sewer system, there's a couple of things that we're trying to do to really minimize the street flooding that we have, to minimize the stormwater or the sewage back up into basements. And the real thing that we're also trying to do is really, in the project down in Lincoln Park is a manifestation of that, is to minimize the combined sewer overflows that go into the Hudson River. And since we started some green infrastructure back in 2015, we put some technology in to really measure. We got these smart cover monitors that measure at some of our overflows the amount of sewage that actually goes out to the river. We've noticed a significant decrease in the number of stormwater overflow events we have into the Hudson, and certainly the magnitude of those events, which is kind of nice because we're seeing certainly an increase in the what I call the rain bombs that are due to warmer ocean temperatures. We have a little bit more moist atmosphere, and the rainstorms we get are those 2 or 3 inch rainstorms in an hour. And those are real crushing events for us because our system simply can't handle that volume of water. So we really want to try to look at getting some natural systems to soak in and slow down the rain, detain it, and manage the stormwater where it falls. So examples of that: porous pavement, that's what we did on Quail Street. And that's the area between the sidewalk and the curbs. We had porous pavement placed in there, and that water then goes into an infiltration into constructed, I hate to say, use the word bioretention basins, but that's essentially what they are. They're structural soil that we've got that contain a significant amount of this water. Ultimately, it goes back into the combined sewer system, but we hold back a tremendous volume of water where it falls. And that's part of the project we did when we put a separate storm sewer down Elberon Place that collected stormwater runoff directly from about 9 acres of land. And that water goes into Washington Park Lake. Now we can control the Washington Park Lake level up and down. So when we anticipate a rain event with our Opti technology, we slowly lower the level of the lake. It's barely noticeable, but that provides a significant amount of storage. So when it does rain, the water that's coming into the Quail Street system and down Elberon, that can get into the Washington Park Lake and we can absorb some of that before the lake level then overflows, goes back into the combined sewer system. So it still goes back in the combined sewer because we just can't separate all those sewers that we have in the city that go from uptown all the way down to the river. And the other item is what you see towards the right of the screen. That's really street trees and these tree pit areas. And under that, we've got, it could be a variety of different technologies to either store water or just allow the water to go into the soil and into the groundwater. So one of the issues that we had up in the Melrose neighborhood, just up from you guys a little bit farther up the Beaver Creek watershed, they've had a lot of basement backups and a lot of street flooding. And ironically, the soil's up, most of the soil as you get out towards Brevedor Street and Upper Washington Avenue there is very sandy soil. So back in 2011, 2012, 2013, along Melrose, where the low area, they put a lot of stormwater or groundwater recharge. They capture the water coming down, separate it, and allow that water to go into the ground. And that works really good unless you've had a lot of rain over a period of time and the groundwater level comes up. So when the water comes down, there's just no place for it to go. So it kind of floods and ponds on the street. So we made a commitment. We worked with one of our consultants, Arcadis. We actually modeled the area that I've got outlined on the left. That's a part of the drainage to the Beaver Creek sewer shed up in the upper part of the system, up on Western Avenue towards Washington Avenue, out towards SUNY. And we did a lot of residential survey. And what we're trying to do at some point is there a silver bullet that we could have to provide some additional stormwater management process that could mitigate the amount of water that was going into the Beaver Creek trunk sewer, would actually benefit Pine Hills and the downstream areas, because we would not have all that water coming down, taking the capacity out of the storm sewer system and not allowing any stormwater that was being generated in your neighborhood to get into the system. So the bottom line is we had a project, but it was about $18 million. We said, well, that's not the silver bullet we were looking for. So what we decided to do is to look at kind of biting off some other projects that we could look at that would enable us to solve problems on a local level and try to integrate it with more capital projects either the water department had or that DGS had. So what we try to do in an area like this is we try to work with DGS, find out what their paving program is going to look like for a 2-year window ahead of time. The difficulty is that it's difficult for them to do that with the system that they use to rate the streets based on the need for paving. And then, as you know, we're also trying to get some equity and spread these projects out through the city, so every neighborhood gets the benefit of these investments in the street and sidewalk improvements. So Melrose does have soils that are kind of, we call them infiltrated soils. They're a little more sandy. And that's, so what we wound up doing is more these small scale projects, they're more cost effective. So they had a project coming up on Hawthorne Avenue, and we looked at a variety of potential projects there, and we came up with tree pits. So on the section of Hawthorne Avenue that they paved, we, as part of that project, we said, hey, we'll work with you guys and we'll pay your contractor, I think it was $150,000 or $200,000 to install whatever number of tree pits we could do for that amount. And Jay can certainly speak a little bit more into that, as far as how those trees really help both our program and his. So the beauty of this is that we've got a project where the streets kind of taking responsibility for managing their stormwater instead of letting it go somewhere else. And as we keep doing these projects, we're really beginning to get some solutions to some flooding. And the other beauty of it is that we wind up working together closely with DGS every year. So let me get out of that. I'll leave this one up for now. But as I go back and look at it, when we talked in 2015 about Quail Street, we had one GI project that we did beforehand, and that was the rain garden at Pinewood Avenue at Hackett. And that's still there. And if you ever kind of walk through the neighborhood or drive by, you see that. And it's very inconspicuous. You see this thing at the triangle part of Pinewood and Hackett, and that receives a lot of separated stormwater coming down Pinewood Avenue, and it gets stored, treated, and absorbed by the vegetation in that rain garden. And whatever is then not handled or detained, then that goes into the Beaver Creek trunk sewer. And if we did, hundreds of them through the city, that has a really cumulative effect. And where you see something like that, I've looked at Philadelphia's GI program. These are scalable, and they do that all over the city, and it's treated millions of gallons of stormwater. We need to do the same thing. So other projects that we've done, and they've used different kinds of technology. Ramsey Place, everybody knows that was kind of a controversial project when we first proposed it, and now that's probably one of the nicest streets in the city the way it came out. And what we did is we put permeable pavement in a section about 2 foot from the curb into the street. That's permeable concrete, permeable pavement. Water flows to that, the stormwater flows to that, percolates into the ground and into the tree pits that are between the sidewalk and the curb. And it stores a tremendous amount of water. And I think over the course of the year, we could probably get a storm. We can probably get up to half a million gallons of water stored on the storm there. And that, again, that water winds up going back into the trunk sewer, but well after that peak flow in the trunk sewer has subsided. So we're detaining water there. We did Maryline Avenue, and that's one where we actually put permeable pavement in. And that was a project we worked and took a lot of the knowledge that Sergio Panunzio, the DGS commissioner who came to the city about 3 years ago, he had a lot of experience with that process and that technology down in New Jersey. So we learned a lot from that, and that project is working pretty well. Hawthorne Avenue is tree pits. North Swan Street was like Quail Street. We tried to do some decorative landscaping along the sidewalk in the maintenance area, and unless those are maintained, the weeds grow in and they look like hell after a while. So they can still take the stormwater that's coming off in a very local area, but unless you're going to maintain those with some vegetation, they just don't look as nice as we'd like them to. So that's a lesson learned. Talked about Quail Street, Marietta Place off Whitehall Road. That's bioretention and rain gardens. Melrose was groundwater recharge. Hanson Ripen was an interesting project. That's just immediately upstream part of a little part of Pine Hills, and that's a constructed wetland off of Ripen Avenue. And when you look at that, it looks like it's been here for 50 years, and it's been here for 3. And people were concerned about, geez, it's going to attract mosquitoes. It doesn't, because the vegetation, there's a lot of birds around and other wildlife that actually controls the insect population. Then in the Babe Ruth field that's adjacent to that, we store about 750,000 gallons of separated stormwater is actually under the Babe Ruth field. And now, last year, we actually put a pump system in that we can capture some of that collected water, treat it, and then irrigate it on the Babe Ruth field. So those are just some projects that we've worked on that I call on a macro level for stormwater management with green infrastructure. And then there's practices that individuals can do with rain barrels and things in their house that I know we were promoting that earlier. So again, these are a bunch of different ideas that we've gotten, things that we've done. If there is a way that a concern about the asphalt areas, I assume John, are you talking about between the sidewalk and the curb, the maintenance areas? If those are asphalt, I know the city and DGS, the mayor's, one of her agendas was to get rid of all the asphalt sidewalks, in parts of the neighborhood, make them concrete. And then when we had the asphalt areas in these neighborhoods between the sidewalks and the curb, if we do any kind of work there, we do not put asphalt back. We actually been putting soil and try to make it where we can put trees back in that area. So one of the things that you guys could do that would help us quite a bit, and it would also help us work with DGS, is try to get a census that we can map where those areas are. We can put them on our GIS system and then try to build it into a project. Carolyn, you had a question?
No, I was just saying I already did that mapping, so.
Yeah, if you can share that with us, we can put that on a layer GIS.
Yeah, I also have other questions, but I'm going to wait till you're done. So I just want to let you know that we actually already started that census process here.
And the beauty of that is that we can incorporate some of those into our broader plans. And if we can bundle something, either we can do some of that work as a water department and self-perform it, or if it has a significant enough critical mass, and we can integrate it with some other either water main replacement work or sewer renovation we're trying to do, that can just be built into that project. So that helps us quite a bit.
Well, before Joe, you move on to lead water supply replacement of that, let's talk about this a little, because as you know, it's a priority for the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association. Mayor Sheehan has committed to working with us on removal and replacement of those asphalt strips or blacktop strips with green areas and other options. one of the things that has been a concern is where you have blocks that are almost entirely rental or are entirely rental, and you're not likely to have homeowner type maintenance, what techniques can you take? And we'd like to try and add value by working with the city to find those techniques. But in particular, some of the things that you showed us that have taken place on Ramsey and elsewhere, are those techniques that could be used here as well, where we wouldn't have the bad results after a couple of years, the way it looks, for example, on Quail Street? Or are there maintenance steps that we can take to keep those areas looking better and hopefully working well?
We were trying to take advantage of these areas that were not permeable concrete on Quail Street and some of these other areas, and try to make them some kind of like a landscaped area where you either have maybe a small tree or a decorative tree, and then have some other kind of plantings around that. And we tried to do the same thing on North Swan Street. I don't think that works. So I think we're better off just kind of putting in, trees. Plant a tree, and Jay can talk more to that when he, does his presentation. If the tree is planted and it's got a structural soil beneath the tree, and all we're looking for is a soil surface that water can run into. You don't have to have a lot of fancy plants. You don't need a lot of stuff. We just need the water not to get directly running off into the street. And, it's even better in the summertime because trees, with all the transpiration, they can absorb substantial amounts of water. We need to get the water from the sidewalk into that maintenance area and try to allow some mechanism where the soils are permeable enough and the tree zone is substantial and it's got the structural soil that can take that water down there, so the tree can actually help us do the job. So
does the structural soil help with the urban heat island effect? I mean, we hear that green is the best, but is there a difference between the structural soil and concrete in terms of the way it reflects heat and sort of?
Well, you want dirt. Dirt's better than asphalt. Dirt's better than concrete, because the heat's just going to come blowing off concrete, or asphalt's even worse because it's the darker color. Just the way it retains the heat. I just think we want to get dirt. It's
well, does structural soil count as dirt?
Structural soil is just really dirt that the tree is in, and it just allows the tree root to Jay could talk about this. I'm talking way out of my head. This is like me talking brain surgery, but it's just providing enough opportunity for the tree to have a root zone that can be healthy, and that the roots aren't going to come up and blow out the sidewalks, and the roots, we want the roots to go down.
Right.
Joe,
so one of the things that I think that John is getting at is the maintenance strips. So some of what you showed us, say at Melrose, the maintenance is all grass. And as John pointed out, this area, the area that we're looking at to start with at Hudson, that's all rental. And besides the water runoff, the other concerns we have about even using permeable pavement is the heat island and the noise, and some of the other additional concerns that go with not using something green. Do you have, and maybe Jay can speak to this, although maybe not, do you have a sense of some kind of either grass or something else that can green the maintenance strip, but is also low maintenance or no maintenance, ground covers, steppable ground covers, things like that, where even if part of that street didn't have, the whole thing wasn't just pavement and had some sort of green there, that might also help to reduce some of the heat issues and some of the noise issues. Because that's the other thing that the blacktop does, is it just bounces noise around.
Anything that's not blacktop, anything that's not concrete, you want earth, you want Mother Earth down there.
Right.
Plant a tree, and if any kind of vegetation cover is best.
Right.
It doesn't have to be grass. It could be anything that, we don't want, Japanese knotweed or whatever growing there.
No.
But, and again, I think this is where, Jay and the folks at DGS and however they want to do these, as they're planting trees all over the city, anything that's organic, that we got Mother Earth there, is what you want to have. That's going to reduce the heat island effects. It's going to allow us to absorb the water, get down into the root zones, and that's really where we want it to go.
Just to ask a dumb question, can you grow ground covers like that within structural soil, or is structural
Sure.
soil just, yeah, you can. Okay, so there's a lot
Well,
of different approaches.
Structural soil is just kind of like it's a word that's used when we try to do tree pits, but there's still other vegetation that's in the tree. If you go down like Center Square and you got the little things where they put the wrought iron and you got the little areas where the trees are in and they got flowers and stuff planted. It doesn't have to be flowers. It could just be a tree with
Right.
dirt,
Well, certainly in the tree pit, you would just it would make the most sense to just have the tree, but between the trees in the maintenance strip is the other part that we're concerned about. Right now on Quail Street, you have that permeable pavement, and Quail Street is a commercial street and it makes sense for it to be permeable. It would make sense for it to be that way in Center Square, but Hudson is a residential street, and most of the residential streets in the city have green in the maintenance strip. They have grass, or they might have other things. I have other things in mind.
Look at Ramsey Place.
Okay,
Right.
great.
Ramsey's kind of like that. We put trees in and most of the rest of the area is grass, Some people have planted
Right.
flowers and shrubs and bushes, and there's no perfect solution, Carolyn. That's the problem.
Yeah, right.
We're not going to put AstroTurf there, that's going to.
Actually, there is a little bit of AstroTurf there in front of 400.
So, yeah, I mean,
that looks
and I am
awful.
sensitive. I am sensitive to your time, and I can always come back and talk more about specific projects and things at some point.
Or
But
maybe we can have a
Jay
separate
talks-
conversation. Yeah.
Yes, we will be talking more
I can
on
come
that.
back. We can meet specifically with you guys when you start looking at these projects, and I can bring some of my subject matter experts along who are much more knowledgeable about this than I am. But certainly Jay, I'm sure, can address a lot of this when he does his presentation.
Great.
Thank
Can
you.
I talk a little bit about my other project that I want to share with you? Let's see if I can find it. So we are anticipating changes in EPA's lead and copper compliance program. Since 1991, we've been required to monitor for lead and copper in our distribution system. And we've been very fortunate in Albany with our water treatment system and our corrosion control. What we do for corrosion control is we raise the pH in the system by adding lime. So we had to raise the pH of the water up over 8.5, 8.6. So it's kind of alkaline water, but by doing that and using lime, we are able to put a coating, kind of very thin coating of calcium oxide on the inside of our pipes and on the inside of lead service pipes, and that prevents the lead from leaching back into your water. So there's a requirement that 90% of the samples we take have to have a lead concentration less than 15 parts per billion. And we've met that criteria every year since we've been doing corrosion control. Now, at some point, we know that that number is likely going to drop down to 10 parts per billion. So, but we can talk about 15 parts per billion of lead or 10 parts per billion of lead. There is no safe level of lead in drinking water. The safe level is 0. So we know, and you look down at the this little thing down towards where it's inventory received. We've sent surveys out with water bills, and it's on our website. We're asking people to help us identify the nature of their water service coming into the house. If your house was built before 1940, it likely had a lead water service. And if you had, some of those have been replaced. My house on Cardinal Avenue was built in 1930. And I know that the service has been replaced because when I go down to my water meter, I can see the old lead where it came in has been chopped off, and the pipe coming into my meter now is copper. So I know at least coming into the house that it's copper. But does that mean that from where the shut off is to the water main, has that copper or lead? Well, I know in my place it's copper because I saw a copy of the permit that was done back in 1999. So at some point we need in the city of Albany to get an inventory on our 27,000 water services to figure out how many of them are lead, and are they lead all the way in? Are they half copper, half lead, or are they all copper? So far we've got with the surveys, we've got about 2,200 responses back. 38% of those are lead. And as we go back and look at the assessment rolls in the city, we were guessing between 12,000 and 13,000 homes in Albany have lead water services. And when you take 38% of that 28,000, that's about what we expect to see. So we've come up with an idea that, if the level of lead is, healthy level of lead is 0, we need to get all the services removed. Michael Regan, the new EPA administrator, was up in Albany about a month ago with Tonko. And we had just released our lead service program, grant program. We had a contractor on 2nd Street doing some lead service removal with a grant. And Michael Regan said, I like what you guys are doing. He said, Flint, Michigan is replacing water services because they were killing people. Newark, New Jersey is replacing their lead water services because they're under a consent order. You guys are replacing lead water services because it's the right thing to do. And we want to do it. We said, get the lead out by 2040. I'd like to get the lead out of our system quicker than that, but where's the money coming from? So there's some sense that the bipartisan infrastructure bill has a lot of money for lead service removal. We would probably get some part of that. The larger Build Back America Better, whatever that thing is called, even if it's $2 trillion, would have some additional dollars, we think, for lead service removal. In any event, since we put our program together, you can see we've given about $81,000 in grants already this year. Since we started this in June, 13 of the 15 wards have been recipients of the grant. We've provided 54 grants already with not a lot of publicity. And we've replaced 106 full services this year. So at this rate, we could maybe get it done by the turn of the next century. So we need to do it quicker than that. So it's telling me that we need to dedicate some funding to that. And I just want to show one more, because I think it's important of how the program was developed. Maybe this might be a little tougher to read, but I don't know if I can make this bigger without blowing it up. So there's a couple ways to do lead services. If it's on plan, there's a leak on a water service. In the city of Albany, you own your water service from the main to the meter. Historically, the water department, if it's been a leak on a water service from the main to the shutoff, the curb stop, we replace it. If it's been on the inside, it's the homeowner's responsibility because we really can't work on private property. So what happens now if there's a leak? We've got to say, look, you can't just do a half service. The whole thing's got to get replaced because otherwise you're going to have a health issue. So if your water main is inside the street curb, it's not a real long main. So we'll give you $2,000. You do the whole replacement. It's going to cover at least half of your cost. If the main is in the street, we'll replace the main from the main to the curb box, and you'll get a $1,000 grant for doing the remaining part of the work with your contractor. And we just say, if we do half the main, and it's going to be a while before you do the other half, we're going to give you some time. You get, I think it's 90 days to do the other half. And then we'll give you a water filter in that meantime to help bridge that thing to make sure there's no lead in the water. Because frankly, what we've learned, if you do a half service repair, it's not the best way to do it. There'll probably be more lead in the drinking water than not. And then this is kind of the same thing. If you have a sample and you take a sample and you're over the action level, you're going to be eligible for a grant. So I just want to present this a little bit. I know I'm way over time, but our goal here is to give money to the homeowner to help them get rid of the lead in their system. Let's see. And then this is just a copy of the application that we have that you can get off our website. You could talk to Katie McKittrick. This explains it a little bit more on how the eligibility works. It's a pretty simple thing to fill out. And the other thing, if you just want to get a filter, there's an application to do a free water filter. We're happy to give them out. Our laboratory actually now has been certified to do lead sampling. And I think we're charging, I think it's $15. And that's really because we drop the sample stuff off, we pick it up, we'll analyze it. We're a health department certified laboratory, and you're going to get the results back in, probably within 5 days. The health department will do lead sampling and not charge you, but you may not get the results for a few weeks. And private labs will also do it. A lot of my friends have private laboratories, but they'll charge anywhere between $25 to $40 for a lead analysis. So I just want to kind of get that out there. We've got a tremendous amount of information on the lead service replacement program. Frankly, I'm very proud of our water board for stepping up and throwing some money out there, some of our own money to do this, to get it started. I want to see how it goes this year. We may up that grant dollar amount next year. I'd like to see if I can get enough water department personnel that I can dedicate a crew to go out there and do the lead services on our own. So we got a lot of work to do there, but you got to start someplace. So that's the lead water services. Lincoln Park. Look at the website. We've got a project website called Beaver Creek Clean River Project website. We've got all kinds of graphics on that. We do drone overflights on a weekly basis. We're doing real-time up-to-dates on the micro tunneling. We've got 4,000 feet of tunnel that I think we just completed, actually. That's up to 40 to 50 feet below ground, all under Lincoln Park. That's going to take all this flow and bring it down from the new treatment facility in the park down to the treatment plant down near the port. And then on the bowl, if you drive around the bowl, people ask me how things are going. I said, well, a lot of us watch the History Channel. So if you ever watch the History Channel and you're looking at World War II shows, if you imagine Dresden, Germany in 1945, that's kind of what Lincoln Park has been looking like. But I guarantee you at the end of next year, it's going to look beautiful. Everything is going to be done, will be operational. That new satellite facility is all underground. We're going to have the ravine area. It's going to be prepared for ultimately an outdoor learning garden. But it's just going to be a very special place that we've restoring the upper part of the park for use that hasn't been able to be used in God knows how long, 40, 50, 60 years. And the lower fields have been raised. Right now, it looks, we got stuff all over the place, but we're starting to grade the part of the lower bowl towards Eagle Street. It's going to be 3 to 4 feet higher than it was before, and it's going to drain a lot better than it did. So you're all going to be able to use those fields year round. And after talking with the community, with a bunch of meetings and surveys, we did some design charrettes. I hate to use an engineer using a word like charrette. I'll be throwing out my engineering profession. But it wound up that, there's a lot of cricket play down there. There's soccer was a very popular area. There's kickball fields. So we've laid out all the fields in the lower bowl area, and we're going to be grading the fields so that they'll be better for an official cricket pitch. They'll be laid out properly for a soccer field or a football field. Then the kickball fields can be placed, whenever they need them around the perimeter of the field. We're adding more handicap accessible access to the bowls. There'll be one down right now. There's one near the bathhouse, and there'll be another one down near Eagle Street. And I think there's also going to be one on the perimeter road, on the access road on both sides of the bowl. And so we want to have the part of the bowl towards Eagle Street, that half, we want to have that all graded, the drainage done and seeded this year, so it'll be ready to be used next spring. Then the other part of the bowl up closer to the bathhouse will be ready for the spring of 2023. So that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you. Carolyn looks like she had a question.
I just wanted to confirm. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that property owners need to get our own contractor from the curb or inside the curb to our meters, correct?
That's the way it's set up now, Carolyn, unless we have a capital project.
Okay.
For example, when we did Elberon Place, we replaced the water main in Elberon. Our contractor replaced all of the lead water services from the main into the house. We had an agreement with the homeowner. They kind of gave us a license to do the work. We did the same thing on Ramsey Place. We replaced the water services at no cost to the homeowner, at zero cost. And so I think we replaced 46 lead water services on Ramsey Place. For some people didn't want their lead water service replaced, and for nothing, which I'm going, okay. But if it leaks tomorrow, it's on you, and it's going to cost you, $5,000 to get it fixed. So that's one area that there's technology now that you can actually connect a piece of copper to the lead inside your basement and pull the lead out and the copper behind it. That's kind of how the National Grid's doing their gas mains, they're kind of molding them in. We can do that now with technology. So I'm hoping at some point, perhaps, to have the water department purchase one of those machines and then train our dedicated crew to just do those. So we go down to like Leah Street and we do all the lead water services on that street. It may take us, 6 months to do them, but you got to start someplace, and maybe if we get good at it, we get another machine. Then we could do 2 streets at the same time. But one of the things that we need to do is find out, we need to confirm where all these lead services are. And that's why the census is important. And perhaps that's something, John, you and your board can help us get the word out to your members and the other folks in Pine Hills to help us do that census. And if you're not sure, call us up. We'll have our meter guys come out and we can go down and identify it. But on our website, we actually tell you how you can identify the material.
Oh, yeah, we'd be happy to help you get the word out. And for homeowners, property owners, is the only way they can know whether or not they have lead by having the water tested or by having a special exploration done?
I mean, if you're concerned about having lead in the water, you have to have it tested, and frankly, I would not use the Home Depot kit, or something like that. You got to get it tested by a certified lab. It's too important to not get the right number. And, like I said, there's no safe number, but certainly if your number is like 30 or 40 parts per billion and you've got young children in your home, you want to pay attention to that. For some of us, it's a little too late in my place, but so I probably drank a lot of lead when I was a kid, but I think, all kidding aside, for families with young children, that's an important element. And particularly in Albany, where we've got so many older residences and our children might be exposed to lead paint. It's in the home, there's enough stuff that we got challenges with, and lead in the drinking water is kind of one of those silent things that you don't see it, you can't taste it, but it's there and it's deadly. So.
Well, great. Get us information on that and we'll definitely help promote.
Will do.
And thank you very much. So you're going to stick around for a while as we go through and talk with Jay LaVigne and Frank Zeoli, right?
I sure am going to listen, because Jay's going to tell me all the things that I said wrong and how to plant a tree where it actually can absorb water and take the heat away. Jay's a good guy, so I think we're very lucky to have him in the city. Thanks everyone for letting me come in and talk to you tonight.
Thanks very much, Joe. You're a good guy too. But that's a perfect segue. What I'm going to do now is just go straight to Jay. Jay, are you going to need to present anything? I'll need to make you a co-host if you're going to.
No, I didn't prepare anything like that. So
I'll leave you as you are then. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Oh, fair enough. Well, I was really responding to some of the questions you had in the email invite to this. And I guess I'll start with the tree inventory. Over the summer, Davey tree experts came in and did the inventory. They began in July and wrapped up collecting data the beginning of September. And they're still working through the data, because one of the things, one of the nuances of getting a DEC grant is that the DEC wants to do some quality control before they sign off on it. So they're going out and double checking a fair amount of this inventory, about 10%. And they're backlogged because there are a lot of inventories being done across the state right now. So we're kind of waiting for them to get a final sign off before we move into the next stage, which is to do a lot of the hard number crunching and analysis that needs to be done. But that's hopefully by year's end, we'll have in hand and delivered a complete GIS-based tree inventory that'll allow us to really get a sense of what we have, where the forest is going, and what we need to do to maintain it properly over the long run. I guess one of the things, and that's where we are with the inventory. I'm looking at the next question was types of street trees, including options for mature trees. And I guess to speak to that, the standard tree we plant is usually 2 to 2.5 inches in caliper. The general wisdom is that it takes a year for every caliper inch of a tree to recover from having been transplanted. So, for example, if you take a 2-inch caliper tree and you plant it next to a 4-inch caliper tree, in 2 years' time, the 2-inch caliper tree is recovered and begins to grow again. In 4 years' time, it will catch that 4-inch caliper tree as it's just recovering and starting to grow again. So the economies of that says that in 4 years, you're going to have the same tree, whether you spend the money, the time, the energy to plant a bigger, more mature tree to start with. I mean, there's certain places and times when it makes sense to plant bigger trees, but usually that's in situations where you're dealing with high traffic and high likelihood of vandalism, where you need the image of something more mature to just kind of stand out. But because bigger trees are a little more durable and a little more resistant to vandalism than smaller trees. But outside of, in general practice, it's usually best to go with 2 to 2.5 inch calipers. So that's our standard specification in the city right now. And that's true of everything from the engineering program to things the water department plants to stuff DGS does in-house. So, and I assume someone was curious about that for a specific reason. If they're in attendance tonight and want to ask about it, I hope they will. What else should I cover? Processes for planting and maintenance requirements. Currently, we're a very reactive division, the forestry division in the city, and that includes planting trees. So when I arrived in 2018, the major way trees got planted was through a resident cost share program, where a resident could request a tree be planted and cover half the cost of it. The city would cover the other half, and that's how trees got planted. And you know, I mean, that has its place. Most studies show that if people buy into buying a tree, they spend the money, they're invested emotionally as well. So you end up having trees that are cared for, tended, and tend to survive. Whereas a lot of projects where, you know, they're mass plantings, it's not uncommon to have high rates of loss over the years because they're just planned and plunked in place and then walked away and left on their own. We're working on other things. One of the things we really would like to do is to create a fund where we can underwrite or do a sort of a sliding scale where we can, if we get the buy-in, the emotional buy-in to getting a tree planted, we'll find a way to get that, make that happen. But that's still really we have to find a way to make that fair to everybody. And I think one of the problems is there's a sense that, you know, if you just start giving away trees, then you run the risk of having no one interested in actually participating in the other program. And things that are free don't necessarily get taken care of as well. It's a sad fact of urban forestry.
So Jay, one of the issues, this is John Clarkson, we're trying to deal with is, and that the 2025 Trees program and the discussion around it sort of is aimed at are blocks that are either largely or completely rental blocks. Now, the fact of the matter is, if you're a landlord whose only interest is, well, most landlords, they just want to maintain their buildings and keep the renters happy and do all of that. So making improvements like a tree in front just isn't high on their list. In fact, it's more work for them to do. So these are some of the blocks that are most devoid of trees, that are most in need of assistance. It's consistent with a solid equity agenda that you try and address those blocks, right? Because we can't say, well, they're rental, so we're not going to do it. That's definitely denying a fundamental benefit of a nice residential neighborhood to people who live in rental blocks. So we have to try and find ways to deal with this. Our neighborhood association is looking at the problem, and indeed looking at some of the blocks that are most affected, that have asphalt paving where there used to be grass and have few or no trees, and trying to find ways to support that, working with the city, of course. So I wonder if you would have any tips. What if we know that it's probably unlikely to get homeowner support for tree watering and other things for a particular block? Are there ways the neighborhood association with volunteers and businesses and others that want to help can work around this fundamental problem and try and give trees at least a good year's start, and try and work with vegetative strips and green areas in ways that will work, though they may not get the type of maintenance they would get from a homeowner occupied property?
No, and I've spoken with Martin Daly about this a couple of years ago. I remember that, and Owusu Anand's brought it up with me as well. And so it's definitely on the radar, and particularly in Pine Hills, because there are streets where it's definitely an issue. I mean, one of the places I think of that I walk on periodically is Cortlandt Place, which is it's a single block, a long block between Western and Washington, and it has, as you say, you know, a sidewalk and then this asphalt strip, and then tucked in there are a few trees. And in the 3 years I've been here, we've lost probably 6 or 8 trees on that block. They reach a certain size, they max out the available sort of root space, permeable space for gathering water and nutrients, and they decline and they start to die back, and then that's it. And so, you know, that's a street that's suffering. But if I look at it and I imagine trying to plant trees on it, what I find is that at some point we decided that this street should have a 4-foot wide sidewalk going all the way down, and or at least on the residential side of that street. And that only left 2 feet, and sometimes less than 2 feet, of what we would call the maintenance strip or the city strip. And that's not a lot of space for a tree to survive. In fact, it's not a great space for even grass to survive. When you talk about heat island effect, you have to remember that most turf prefers to grow at 70 degrees or lower. And that's ground temperature, that's not air temperature. So if you take a small 2-foot wide strip and try and plant and peel up the asphalt, and it's stuck between a 6-inch granite curb and a 4-inch concrete slab, that both can reach 100 degrees or more. If that heat permeates through, it can actually cook off all the water that's in that space, and it can volatilize any nutrients that might be in there. And that happens on an annual basis. And so it becomes very challenging to try and grow things in that space. And once you lose overhead canopy, it becomes even harder, because that's the shade that actually allows that to be a livable space. So it's one of those kind of catch-22s that's going to be challenging to confront. And especially, you know, the alternative has to be something other than turf, I would think. And the alternative for trees is, you know, can't plant large form trees. They're going to have to be smaller form trees that don't have the same water and nutrient demands. And that's true. I mean, looking at Upper Hudson, or is it Hamilton, one of those 2 blocks between Partridge and Ontario is, again, heavily, you know, you have the concrete sidewalks, a narrow asphalt strip, and there are mature trees in there. There are a couple big silver maples, and they're starting to go. And the question is, how do you deal with that? How do you fix that problem? And so what I would suggest is some of these are structural issues that are going to require structural solutions. In other places, that's not the case in the Pine Hills. I mean, if you look at Western Ave across from SUNY Alumni Quad between Partridge and Ontario, and actually Western Ave between Partridge and Quail, there's a huge city strip, and there are not many trees planted there at all. It's a great opportunity to do some tree planting, but it's also a major thoroughfare. So you could argue that it might make more sense to try and buffer noise pollution and air pollution on a major thoroughfare. But these are things we're still looking at and trying to sort out. I mean, Martin was concerned about Myrtle Avenue, where we'd removed some mature trees that were in decline. And he was very troubled by that, as I recall. And we did discuss perhaps doing like a neighborhood association planting event. But that takes and the city's not averse to that. It's just a matter of getting an organizational, like a critical mass, in order to actually put that all together and make it happen.
Well, we're here and we're leaning into that issue. In fact, I don't want to take too much time tonight, but I'm hoping you can meet with us separately later on so we can go. As Carolyn pointed out, we're already doing inventories of the streets that have the asphalt, so that we could provide you with that information. But the point you raised, where it's only 2 feet wide, you're going to kind of have a problem there anyway. we still, at no point, I'll tell you, we don't want to throw up our arms and say, okay, nothing we can do, because we don't feel that's the right response. Maybe there are areas where using a different type of tree, or perhaps starting with a wider caliper, that makes them more survivable. I don't know. Those are the sort of things we'd like to talk to you about. And specifically block by block, if you could help us map it out at that level. Is that something you could help with?
Sure, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
fantastic.
And one of the things, yeah, I mean, I hate to, the joke was about AstroTurf earlier, like you could put AstroTurf in there. But one of the nice things about AstroTurf is that it's very permeable. I don't know if many of you have been on synthetic fields, but the idea is that most of those can absorb and disperse 2 to 4 inches of rain an hour. So in other words, it rains 2 inches at 2 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, you should be able to run out there and play ball and be totally functional. And so one of the things to think about in some of these narrow strips may be to create a permeable covering in certain areas. And there's products like FlexiPave that allow permeability, but you can still walk on them without compacting and affecting the permeability. I mean, so you're fighting compaction is really, so, and if we can get that, then you have higher water holding capacity in these areas where they are permeable. And that'll allow you to grow trees up and down the curb from there while also capturing water and nutrients they need. Because
I'm going to confess, I know what AstroTurf is. I think I don't know that it's the city's practice to go around, not planting, but spreading that. FlexiPave, what is that?
It started as I believe the initial application came from recycled tires that were ground up and then held together and mixed in some cases with pea stone or another hard aggregate, and then glued together in a way that allowed a lot of air and a lot of permeability, and yet it would support the weight of a person walking over it. There's some places where you can find this on Spring Street. The tree pits have FlexiPave in them so that pedestrians can walk without a trip hazard. On New Scotland, and I'm going to struggle here, on the block with Graney's and the fountain.
Okay, we know the block. Yep.
So
you use that there. Yep.
It's been used there too, and it might be something that could be used in certain specific places between the curb and the sidewalk, and interspaced with areas where you plant, so that those areas have resources extending north and south of an actual tree pit, so to speak.
well, Jay, wouldn't the structural soil and some of the other things that Joe was just talking about also help with water retention and more nutrients, and maybe that would also help keep the soil temperature down for the trees, so that there's more soil underneath, in addition to whatever else is in the maintenance strip, whether it's a planting or a permeable pavement. There's also a different, I think it might be a different product, but there's permeable pavement on Quail Street as well. That was part of the project that Joe was talking about earlier. So those are some considerations as well, so that there are options out there. But would the structural soil itself help with some of the issues of temperature and nutrients for the trees in the narrower maintenance strip?
So I guess is the question then, is the structural soil and this FlexiPave, are they sort of substitutes, or are they very different?
Yeah, you're really talking about, you want a minimum area to be dealing with. You're talking like a 6-inch thing. You can't really plant anything there. That's to your point, right?
Yeah, we're thinking more 2 feet, but yeah.
2 feet's tough too. I mean, right now I'm pushing in the city when we redo a street to get 50 square foot tree pits at a minimum, with 5 by 10s. And that's so that there is a lot more permeable space for the water and gas exchange and those sorts of things, but also that the heat island effect doesn't actually, there's more of a buffer to fight the heat coming off sidewalks and curbs and asphalt as well. So when you start shrinking, I mean, and this is tough in Albany because there are places where I swear we have 2x2 tree pits and the trees are that size. So you try and say, well, you can't grow a tree in a tiny tree pit, but somehow they're living proof that you can, but I'm not sure it's the best idea or it's something you really want to try in this day and age. And so the 2 foot wide strip is very challenging. I think that's all I'm saying. And there may be solutions and they may be easy and readily available, but I'm not acquainted with them at this point. And it may just require more research, to be honest with you.
And Jay, we dealt with it a little bit too. When you look at the projects we have, to your point, many of the streets and all, but you don't have 5 feet between, the curb and the edge of the sidewalk. If we get 3 to 4 feet, we're pretty happy with it. So what we wind up doing is going with smaller trees that are more ornamental trees that don't grow, to the wide diameters, but still provide some shade and some aesthetic where we can on those streets.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure, Marilyn, go.
Yeah, we had trees at Upper Madison, and as you know, John Hammer is really vigilant, and so we had probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 trees planted, and they're probably now at least 5 years old. Now 2 up at the end where North Allen or Allen and Madison come together, 2 of them are dying or have died. Now the question is, we've talked and we've actually got a couple of people that are willing to to pay the cost for replacing them. Now, do you think, is that worthwhile? I mean, or is it something in the soil or something in that area that we might be, throwing money at something that won't work? I mean, could we try, having the trees removed and then putting in an application to get 2 new trees? What do you think?
Yeah, I noticed those 2 red maples folded up this spring.
Yeah, I mean, it was like weird. And John really, I mean, he's out there. He did an excellent, 3 years constant watering. I mean, he doesn't mess around. He's really a tree lover, and he took care of them. And the others are fine, but just those 2. And, so we don't know whether we should try to replace. We can replace them. We will have money, but you think it's worthwhile doing it?
I think I'd like to do a soil test, to be honest with you. And I haven't looked that carefully. I mean, I did notice that it happened after they were mulched. It's possible one of them was it's strange what happened there. It's worth looking a little closer at it. And we are looking closely at that neighborhood too, because we're going to lose a lot of ash trees in that block.
Yes, right.
And in the block farther down Western Ave, there are a couple that are succumbing to emerald ash borer as well. So that's something we're going to look a lot closer at in the coming year, to be honest with you. So
okay.
But maybe it does start with.
Yeah. No, I was just going to ask you, what's the date that you have to have your, like for people who might want to do the tree share plan? What date is the application due?
Fall planting closed September 15th.
Yeah, I know that. All right. So what?
And so spring planting will open in, I believe it's March at this point.
Oh, okay.
But I can double check.
Yeah, I just wondered when that was, so we can sort of think about it. Okay, that's it. That's all I wanted to ask.
If I can just chime in here, one of the things I learned over the years more recently is that there is such a thing as overwatering too. And that's a challenge to figure out, because you think that, gee, just keep on watering and everything's going to be great. but the roots actually need oxygen, I think it is, or I don't know. And if they're constantly immersed in water, then they are not going to get that part of the nutrients that they need. So it's a little more of an art form than I used to think.
Yeah, there's
I
gas
see Jay
exchange. that
shaking
goes
his
on.
head, yes, okay, yeah. Because that can happen.
Yeah, Rick has a question.
Rick?
Yes. Rick Chesser. My question was, I run Steamer 10, and there's a rather large pine tree at West Lawrence and Western. It is kind of obviously dying. I was wondering if there was anything that you could do for it, or if it's going to be history.
I believe that's a fir, and it's suffering from what's known as needle cast. It's pretty commonplace at this point, and it's a function of fungi that are doing a lot better and are slowly changing climate than some of the trees are doing, defending themselves. So at this point, and given the amount of defoliation on that tree, I would say its days are numbered.
Oh, well, if you can deal with it, that would be good, since it's city property. I know, lucky
Understood.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Carolyn?
I just have two questions. One is, when you remove a tree, do you just grind down the stump, or do you pull it? And how long after the tree is removed can a new tree be planted? That's one. The other is, I assume we just use C-Click-Fix to report dead trees. And then the other is, how do you inform property owners about the care of the tree in terms of watering, not watering, and in particular, not mulching? So.
All right, first was stump removal, right?
Yeah.
That's an art form too, to be honest with you. There's certain cases where if we're very aggressive at removing a stump, pulling stumps is rare. It's mostly grinding, which is a process where you use a big machine and grind away the wood and the dirt, and you can actually, with modern machines, you can get quite deep and eliminate a large amount of the stump. And if that's done, and we'll focus on that if we're working in areas where there's sidewalks with tree pits and we know we're going to replant in them, then we'll much more aggressively grind a stump. If we're in a neighborhood where there's a city strip, a grass strip that's continuous, we're less likely to be as aggressive because we have more locations where we can replace a tree, and we're not forced to go right back into that one space that isn't impermeable. And so if a stump is aggressively ground, you can pretty much replace a tree in that same site. If not, and so there's two, I should say this. So there are two answers to your question. One, we try and make sure that we don't limit the number of trees we can plant. And so if that is the only site available in that section of town, then we're going to make that site tenable. If there are other alternatives, we may not be as aggressive, but that still allows an opportunity to replant in the vicinity.
Jay, thank you. This is fascinating stuff, and we want to sit down with you again, so we're going to be reaching out. I'm a little bit looking at the time because we still have more to cover, but this has been one of the most interesting discussions we've had. So, and Joe, this applies to you. Joe and Jay, we expect you to come back again and to meet with us privately, as well as we pursue an effort to try and repopulate and green some of the blocks in Midtown where there really is a serious issue. So we appreciate it. Frank, are you here?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. There you are. So Frank Zeoli is going to share with us the new frequent offenders local law, how it's going, what it does, and how it's being implemented. To you,
Okay.
Frank.
So I think for the neighborhood groups, one of your council members, Owusu Anani, actually sponsored him and Kathy Fahey and the 7th Ward sponsored a piece of legislation. One of the issues that has come up numerous times when it comes to property maintenance is we have got to provide a 5-day notice every single time somebody does not mow their lawn, or they have trash in their yard, or they have trash on the side of their house. We have to provide them with a 5-day notice in order to go on their property, clean it up, bill them, and fine them as a result. So it's very frustrating because the 5 days is the 5-day we got to give them to do it, but you've got to then send them a letter certified, which could take another 5 days. And then we go back and see that they did or did not do it. Then we have to schedule it and get it done. So for some of these repeat properties that are just bad, and a lot of your absentee landlords that don't care, it's a constant battle and it takes forever. So after numerous conversations with Kathy Fahey, Owusu, I think Judy, we probably spoke about it as well. It was, what do we do about this? And the decision came about that we were going to do a repeat offenders law. So an ordinance was floated and passed by the council that we no longer have to give a 5-day notice to anybody who has received notice at least twice in the past and who has not done anything. So we've had to go and clean it, bill them, fine them, and do the work. We're able to keep track of that within our own database system that we use for billing and for notices. So we're able to know this particular property has been posted twice, and both times we had to go in and clean it. Therefore, they don't need to get a notice this time. And, you know, we'll have certain safeguards in there where if a property changes hands, things like that, we give people reset it. So, you know, we're phasing that in. We haven't done anything with it yet, only because we're getting towards the end of the year now. And not that we don't have property maintenance issues in the winter, but we usually like to wait until something, a new code ends up in the generalcode.com website, because we always want to be able to point to something for people, for the residents to see it, right? We can give them the info and do a flyer, do a promotional thing to tell them, but we want to always have that official location. So we're going to be doing it very soon. It'll be the case that, again, we roll up on a property, we see that it's overgrown, there's trash, whatever, we don't have to give the notice. We could just go on the property, schedule it, clean it, and it'll cut down probably 5 to 10 days off the whole process.
Frank, did I understand then? So I guess the clock hasn't started ticking in terms of establishing folks as frequent offenders until next
No, it just
year?
passed.
Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yes. It just
Yeah.
passed a few months ago. And like I said, it hasn't hit generalcode.com yet. So I was just talking to the clerk's office to find out when that's going to happen, because I don't like
I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
I
don't
got
like
you.
to do that. Yeah.
So when it starts, I guess certain properties will start popping up as frequent offenders. Will that list be public?
Well, I don't know that. I'd have to check with our law office to see if that's something we would make public. I mean, for what reason? Just a scarlet letter? The idea would be that, you know, we get a complaint about a property that's in that it has a property maintenance issue, again, trash, overgrowth, whatever. What this does, the frequent offenders thing does for us is it just takes away that 5-day notice so that DGS can mitigate it sooner, bill them and fine them.
Well, there is, just as a heads up, there is kind of interest in that concept, because we often feel that many times the problem properties are problems not only as repeat offenders, but in multiple areas. That is, a house that has overgrowth constantly or constant building violations may also be a house that has frequent police calls, disturbances, and emanations of noise. So one of the things we're looking at is, can we focus on those repeat and multiple problem offenders for enforcement actions? But this is a great start, and we hope it works very well in implementation. Well, thank you. You did that very quickly, and it's good because we had a lot of
finished our 2 hour. We just finished our 2-hour budget meeting, so my second meeting on top. So I'm so I can do it quick, no problem.
Can I ask?
Zeoli, we are kind of tight in time, but go ahead if it could be a quick question, please.
Yeah, Frank, we got a Pomeroy grant for a historic marker, and
Mhm.
we've been waiting for since July, so that we could have a dedication. The marker is sitting in steamer 10. Rick's been in contact with DGS, but it's still not put in. Can you facilitate
Rick,
getting it to happen?
Last time we talked about this, I think the ball was in your court. You were going to let me know something.
I think I had first dealt with, oh, now I can't remember his name. Used to be a supervisor with,
I think I sent Dan Futia. He met with you.
right.
Right. And he figured out exactly what needed to be done. And he said that when you were ready, you'd be calling.
Oh, I had told him at the time we were ready.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. All right.
Miscommunications.
Why don't we do this, Rick? Why don't you call me like either tomorrow or Monday, and let's get something scheduled. But yeah, I mean, let's do it. I mean, it's not a big deal for us to take the old one out, put the new one in. I think there might be a small concrete pad that needs to be replaced. Is that true?
There's an existing historic marker
Yep.
that's set in a foot of concrete
Yeah.
and down probably a couple of feet.
Yep.
At the theater, I have a new steel pillar
Okay.
pipe and the cast iron marker.
Okay.
So once the old one is popped out and we can pour some concrete in and
put
put
the
that
new one
pipe in,
Okay.
we're ready to go.
All right. So why don't you call me either tomorrow or Monday, and let's figure it out and let's get it scheduled over the next, because we're going to get to a point where concrete's not going to be able to be laid anymore. So let's get this done in the next couple of weeks. Okay.
Okay. And we've still got 3 bike barriers in Steamer 10's driveway left over from the street fair.
Oh, all right. Well, okay.
I keep calling DGS and asking, and they're like, oh, we'll put it on a schedule.
Just when that comes up, I mean, again, call. Sometimes things get caught up. Just email me and I'll make sure it's done. Okay.
You got it.
All
Thanks.
right. Got it.
Frank, can I ask you another question?
Sure.
But which has nothing to do with DGS, but I saw in the paper that you're the president of the Italian American Museum.
Community
And
Center. Italian American
Yeah,
Community.
We're running out of time.
And
Mary, we really
anyway,
are.
would you be willing to sometime come and give a talk about the museum?
Sure. Anytime.
Okay, all right, that's
Done
it.
deal. Great, thank you. Now, we also have a special request, which I do want to honor, from Carol June Washington, to speak about the Albany Community Police Advisory Committee. And are you ready to go on that? Carol June, you'll have to unmute.
John, are you all set with me? Because if you don't mind,
We're all set. Yes,
thank you for
Frank.
having me, but I kind of want to go home and have some dinner. So thank you very
I'm
much.
jealous. I'm jealous, Frank, that you get off.
Permission is not required for exiting to eat dinner. That's
Thank you,
a
everybody.
standard
Well-
operating practice.
We'll speak soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
So Carol June? She's still muted. Well, let's go on with the agenda, and Marilyn, maybe you can send her an email or something.
Yeah,
We'll try.
Yeah,
The Committee on University and Community Relations, Luke.
Hey, everybody, how we doing? A few updates from us on our end. As far as the school goes, we're right now at the midterm point, so a little over halfway at this point. Our homecoming, which was last weekend, went quite well. We did lose, unfortunately, to Villanova, but they were ranked 5th in the nation, so we held our own. Only lost by 7, not terrible. And the game was fun in the rain, and everything else went pretty well as well. So that was really awesome. We did have our Pine Hills cleanup on Sunday, this past Sunday, and I want to thank Leah and Carolyn for coming out and supporting. We really appreciated all the help and the company. And we had a decent number of students come out. It was a little rainy, but overall they cleaned up a lot of trash, and that was great. DGS was out around 3:30 p.m. picking up all those orange bags in the community, so that was good as well. I did want to let you guys know about a few events that are coming up. First and foremost, this upcoming Sunday on October 24th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. If you have kids or if you know someone who has kids, the University of Albany's men's basketball team is going to be doing a Halloween themed trick-or-treating event at the CEFCU. So on the Uptown campus, Coach Killings and the basketball players, they've got games in there. They're going to have music. They're going to have trick-or-treating. There's going to be a costume contest with some prizes. And of course, all the kids will get a chance to meet the basketball players. So registration is required in advance. John, I will send you a flyer for that and you can push it out to the listserv, okay? Additionally, the city of Albany is holding several Halloween events. The off-campus ambassador team and myself will be dressing up and will be at the Washington Park event, which will be occurring on October 29th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And that's a walkthrough / drive-through trick-or-treat / pumpkin giveaway event that's being hosted by the commissioner from Parks and Recreation there, Jonathan Jones and his team, and our team is going to be supporting them in that initiative. And again, there's a flyer that is attached, and I will send it to you, John, so that you can push it out to the group. Last night, the University of Albany's College of Rockefeller, we had a Mayoral Forum that was pretty interesting for those of you that were able to attend. All three candidates were able to come and speak on the issues. And the night before last, we hosted New York State Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, and President Rodriguez had done an interview with her as part of our Leading Questions conversation series, and that also went very well. We are currently in preparations for Halloween weekend. My office is working with the Albany Police Department. We're talking about not only the staffing, having myself and another staff member from my office, but also a couple of UPD officers in the neighborhood. But we're also talking about communication with our students, how we're going to be translating to them our expectations as well as safety information. And so we're working on that plan. And as we know, Halloween is going to be next weekend. So there's also a couple events that are coming up that I wanted to make sure the community was aware of as it relates to home weatherization. The City of Albany's Sustainability Advisory Council, as well as the university's Sustainability Committee, are pairing up to do some free basic home weatherization for Albany residents. And so if you know of anybody who can't do their own home weatherization, feel free to let us know, and we can go in and do some basic stuff: weather stripping, door sweeps, smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, energy efficient light bulbs, things of that nature. And that is all free. And so, John, again, flyer will be coming forthwith tomorrow. I'll send it out to you. We're recruiting volunteers from the University of Albany. It's going to be students and professional staff that are going to be going out and doing this weatherization techniques. We've got some trainings happening, and those dates are going to be November 6th, November 13th, and November 20th. And so if you're eager to get your home weatherized, November 6th, 13th, and 20th are the dates you can choose. If you have some neighbors in mind that you think might benefit from this, you'll see a flyer coming out from John in the near future as to how they can sign up. And the last is a Narcan training program. So the University of Albany is hosting a free Narcan training for our students, our staff, our faculty, and anybody else out there that would like to get some training on administering Narcan. Narcan is the reversal agent for opiate overdoses. At the end of the training, it is going to be an in-person training on the Uptown campus. All individuals who've been trained will receive a free Narcan kit. So you will get 2 doses of Narcan that you'll be able to keep, as well as gloves and instructions on obviously how to use them. And at that point, you'll be fully trained to administer the dose. God forbid you should ever have to do that. But that is going to be on November 3rd. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, it's going to be in the evening on November 3rd. Again, I will attach a flyer and send it to you, John, so that you can push that out to the group. And that is it on my end. Any questions, concerns? John, I think you're muted.
Sorry, amateur mistake. You're on our Google group, aren't you, Luke?
Yes.
You can send the flyers to our entire. We'll take out the middleman here.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, it will be coming.
And that'd be great, and that way people will see it as from SUNY. It will be helpful.
Okay.
Can I also recommend, we just realized that we have this problem with flyers. They don't go through, most of our members are digested. They don't go through the digest. If people don't have a Google account, they can't access the group online, so please put some of the information in the subject line and in the body of the email, because otherwise they won't see the flyer itself. Or you can embed a picture of the flyer in the email, which is probably the best thing to do, and put something in the subject line saying specifically what it's about.
Okay, we'll try it. And if for some reason, Carolyn, you see that it does not work, please let me know so we can get
I
this
will.
information. Yeah, that sounds
Okay,
great.
thanks.
Thank you.
Long run, we'd like to find a technical solution to that, which may mean a different system. But anyway, thank you very much, Luke, and thank you for posting as well. I think it helps people know what they're looking at too, if they see that it comes from you. It's okay, that's a message from SUNY. It just helps sort, because we do have a lot of stuff on our group. But thank you. I'm not seeing any questions, and with the pressure of time, I'm going to move on quickly. So thank you. Let's go to public safety and the NEU staff. Don't know who's. Go ahead.
Hello, Dan Webster. Sorry for the bad lighting. I'll just go through some quick stats real quick, and so I know you guys are ready to move on. But the stats that are sticking out to me that I have are not necessarily related to Pine Hills, but throughout the city. That right now we are wrestling with a serious shortage of manpower, and our call volume is up almost, let's see, 10% from last year at the same time. So our calls for service, we've had over 40,000 calls for service this year, and we're up with part 1 and part 2 crimes, which is serious crimes. So just passing that along so people can be patient about response times and that kind of thing. As far as Pine Hills goes, we've been doing our details every weekend, and we've been doing the open container arrests and that kind of stuff still, and it's been pretty steady every weekend. Nothing crazy like it was in September. Other than that, we definitely dealing with our shots fired issues and the shootings. And also, I can also say that we've actually at this point gotten well over 100 guns off the street this year, which is up about 28% from last year. So we're getting the guns off the street. Unfortunately, there's just so many that it's hard to keep up with. Last week, our detective office literally took 10 guns off the street in 1 week. So just that stuff is not always out there. I wanted to put it out there that guys and gals are doing their best. Other than that, any questions you guys might have, say go for it.
I know we don't have a
tonight.
lot. I know we don't have a
Right.
lot of time. I'd just like to touch base on apparently that the convenience store at Hudson and Quail that was causing trouble with underage drinking. It sounds like SLA shut them down, or at least raided them, and also one of the clerks was arrested. So hopefully that's reducing some of the pressure and some of the issues in that area.
Yeah, that would be great. And I had a feeling that was coming. I haven't wanted to say because I never know what the SLA is going to do, but I knew that we had a ton of SLA forms put into them over the last, I'd say, year. So in past meetings, I wanted to say something, but again, I didn't want anybody to get their hopes up. And then it not happen. But I'm sure at some point they will let them reopen, maybe with some kind of rules and regulations they have to follow. I think the days of 24-hour stores are tough to keep going.
Agreed. Well, thank you very much, Dan. And by the way, that lighting is much better. You don't want to present the gruesome image right in the, even though it's October.
Sorry about that.
All right. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
So moving along, zoning and code enforcement, Leah.
Yep. So the Pine Hills the Zoning and Code Enforcement Committee recommended to the Board of the Neighborhood Association to support the application for 869 Madison which was recently called the Pub. It has been closed for a few years now. There's an applicant to open it up again, and it wound up before the BZA. The board supported the application, and we submitted a letter to the zoning board expressing our support, also urging, with a few caveats, such as urging the business to work with the Committee on University and Community Relations, follow their best practices. I know that Luke has reached out to the business owner, and so that is good. The neighborhood association would like to see productive use of that property, so we're looking forward to that opening probably sometime in early November. And that's it.
Thanks, Leah. Midtown Pine Hill, Carolyn?
So our October meeting is this coming Monday, the 25th, October 25th at 6:30. If you don't already have a Zoom link from me and would like one, let me know. You can email me at the phigpinehills@gmail.com address. Our three committees are moving along. The Trash and Litter Committee is working on some additional education efforts. In particular, Luke's off-campus ambassadors have been getting some of the messages out with handouts with their walks each week on handling trash, on dealing with litter and dealing with recycling. And so we're also going to convert some of those into social media messages and then go from there. Our Trees and Streets subcommittee, as you may have picked up from our conversation tonight, is still working on trying to see what we can do for greening Hudson. We're going to start with a potential pilot project, on Hudson between Ontario and Lake. And then I've reached out, I've asked Owusu, and he has reached out to the planning department to restart our conversation about doing more at Madison Park and what is and isn't doable based on the the community conversations we've already had around this, which was a couple of years ago pre-pandemic, and we got our report on March 10th, 2020. And as you imagine, not much happened after that. So we're hoping that we'll get going again. And that's all I have, unless anybody has questions.
Okay, not seeing any. Thank you, Carolyn. Upper Madison, Maryland.
Our street fair happened a couple of weeks ago. It was very successful. We didn't really know till mid-July whether or not it was even going to happen. We had an excellent crowd. We made some money. It was a good vibe. And we had a post-fair meeting last night, and there was a lot of enthusiasm for next year. It will be happening on October 2nd. So put down October 2nd, 2022 in your calendar. The other thing is we've heard from the Price Chopper, and we've been working with them to restripe the parking lot so that there is an area to increase pedestrian safety, and that is going to happen next spring. And that's it for me.
Excellent. Thank you, Marilyn. Eric Shadow is not here, so I'm going to give the treasurer's report. The PayPal account is at $278.80, and the Trustco account as of today is $5,295.95. That's all I have, and I can't answer any questions. So with that, we go to membership. Danielle, are you going to report on behalf of Will tonight?
Yes. So as of now, we have 80 household memberships. paid in 2021. 5 of our businesses are institutions of that 80. And we had our first subcommittee membership meeting on 10/16, and we are prioritizing rack cards, mailings to new property owners in the neighborhood. Other items discussed were lawn signs, setting up zones to organize lit drops and other outreach, events to get new members, and goals. The goals include increasing membership to pre-pandemic levels and having more one-on-one conversations with neighbors. And that's all.
Excellent, thank you. And I will say to everyone watching now that we hope that next year, we don't know yet, but we hope we'll be able to go back to in-person meetings. So that should help too, we think. So one more shot at Carol June Washington. Are you ready to share your information about
Right,
community?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you. What I was going to talk about is I think everyone received the flyer about the police liaison, community liaison program that the ACPAC and the police department are beginning to kick off with the new set of recruits that are coming in. Oh, thank you. Oh, it's up next in the next couple of weeks. And the intent of the program is to have community people from each ward meet with the recruits and as they're going through their training and give them a snapshot of what each of our neighborhoods are like. A lot of the people coming into the police department and some of the people who have been in it for a while are not familiar with the different communities and how policing we would like to have happen there, what the important things are for neighborhoods. And so we're looking for volunteers of people who would like to be those liaisons who would meet individually with the recruits. The program would go for about 12 weeks, and the volunteer would be asked to spend about an hour a week with a different recruit, again, acquainting them with their neighborhood, what's important, and generally getting them to feel comfortable so that when they actually get assigned and are on the street, they know our city and they know our neighborhoods. So anybody who's interested in taking that on from any one of the wards, if there's a email code there, there's one of those funny things that you can do on your phone, or you can be in touch with, you can be directly in touch with me if you'd like.
Great. Thank you, Carol June. The flyer is on our Facebook page. I also believe it's gone out through our Google group, and thank you for bringing this up. So we are now to updates from elected officials. And I'll start out with Aurora Efficaro, who I saw today down at the county office building for a presentation of a check. Aurora, floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. We did make the presentation today. John was there and Councilman Owusu was also there to receive the check on behalf of the neighborhood association. But the amount, there was a difference. We only got $2,450, and that is because it ended up not coming from the health and safety budget. Instead, it actually came from our member item line. So which means my item line, that's what that money came from. And what that also means is that the mural that we put up does not have to relate to the pandemic, and it also does not have to relate to health and safety, because again, the money is not coming from there anymore, or perhaps it didn't come from there anymore as we were expecting. And they didn't give me as much as I was expecting, so I don't really care much about what they want. So that being said, I did also speak with a landlord, not the landlord, but the cousin of the landlord, to a potential spot. It's located at Hudson and Quill, and there's a grocery store right there, and on the side of the grocery store is this beautiful wall where I think would be a perfect spot where we can put this mural. So that is where we are right now. I spoke with the cousin today. He said I should come back tomorrow to speak with the landlord, who is the owner, but he did like the idea and would probably convince his cousin to accept it. So that is where we are right now. So hopefully tomorrow I will be able to speak with the owner and see where.
Which grocery store was that, Aurora?
It's called Food Mart. Is right there on Hudson and Quail. Food Mart.
Is that the one that just got its SLA thing pulled?
I'm not
That was
sure.
selling to underage kids, selling alcohol to underage kids.
I did read about that, but I'm not sure if that was actually that grocery store. I'm not sure which one it is, but I did read about the underage kids buying stuff. So yeah, it's I believe it's 244. Is that 244 Hudson or 244 Quail? One of those.
That would probably be Quail. I think that is the one, but anyway, we'll check. Well, interesting turn of developments. We should probably continue this conversation later.
Yes, and if you have any question, you can email me, and hopefully tomorrow I should be able to see whether or not we can actually have the bureau in that new location and see where things go. I would email everyone tomorrow to keep you updated on the meeting and give you the correct address for it.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Councilman Anani? It's just the report out time.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is healthy and safe, and glad to be here as always. Right now, it's no secret, it's budget season on the Common Council. Just met with the mayor before the budget season started, and I brought many of your priorities to the front table, particularly with improvements to parks, improvements to more police presence in the neighborhood, making sure we get our fair share. And I'm so glad to see that our beat officer extraordinaire, Joe Coffey, is back. Really excited for that, and I know that the neighbors are all excited for that. In the mayor's budget, I'm really excited to see that there's been major investment towards public safety, with 80 new police officers going to be hired moving forward. While violence is not really, particularly gun violence is not high in the 10th ward, I think that it gives individuals in our neighborhood a peace of mind when they see our neighborhood officers walking around or see more police presence. So I'm excited of that. In the mayor's budget, many of my colleagues have been advocating for a senior service coordinator. The mayor put in the budget for a part-time staffer. I would like to see it become a full-time staffer. As our population increase the age, we want to make sure that we have a senior service coordinator that is providing services to our senior population in the city of Albany. And I know this is usually something that's under the county jurisdiction, but I think it's a step in the right direction. Very too often, there are people that's reaching out to the city of Albany for information and just resources. So I'd like to see that become a full-time position. The mayor has also continued to make an increased investment on summer youth employment in our budget, something that we see all across our city. Our kids, we need to make sure that we're taking care of inner city kids, and the mayor continue to make that investment for summer youth employment. This year, the mayor is requesting for $15 million in state aid and want it to be permanent. Quite frankly, I think it's long overdue, and my colleague Judy Dorchet also agree. And we're glad to see that the mayor has included the $15 million request in the budget. And we just recently passed a resolution supported by the full council, urging the governor and the state legislature to support this important request. And so that's on the legislative aspect. Regarding the budget, two things that I'm working on right now currently. I'm working with Rick LaJoy to come up with abandoned vacant properties to be able to have contact information for the property owner accessible to the public, where if there's a vacant abandoned property, you can go into that property, and planning department is already using this for commercial properties in the instance where there's a developer who is wanted to turn around a property. If you go to that property, they have a QRS code where you can scan it with your phone, and it will give you all the details about that property, where it is and the status, who's the owner, their contact information, and also what is the projected plan for that property. I think is a step in the right direction on two fronts. One is to hold some of these slumlords and absentee landlords accountable, having their contact information, but also there might be someone who's interested in purchasing that property. They will be able to get the owner's information, and if they choose to, reach out to that individual and put out an offer. I think is a win-win for the city, and is going to go into the Building and Codes Committee November 9th, and for further discussion. So if you have any issues or concerns, I'll definitely share at that time. Also, a piece of resolution, which I'm working on right now, urging, and this was done by our treasurer, Darius Shenfar, calling for RFP for banks who are committed to equity and giving out loans to residents in the city of Albany. I'm introducing a similar a resolution urging the county to do the same thing. When you look at what banks could do for communities, we want to make sure that they are, whatever bank that the city of Albany is investing with, they are good stewards to the residents of the city of Albany. So I'm going to urge the county to do the same. And I want to thank Darius for our city treasurer for the RFP, and also his being intentional about such an important issue. We talk about equity, and this is an example of what an equity agenda is supposed to look like. And just as it relates to the neighborhood, everything is going well. Ryan Jankow actually reached out to me yesterday and want to do a ribbon cut in that Rise Apartments building. I believe the date that he wants to, and I think this is Judy's district, but definitely want to make sure that everyone is in the loop about that. It borders the neighborhood, and sometimes I know some council members had a change of heart, but overall, we definitely want to make sure that we support smart development, and it's a benefit to all the neighbors. So I will send more details about that in the next few days.
Did you say you had a date, Owusu? You just started.
I believe he wants, yes, October 29th. It's at 1:30 p.m. and the ribbon cutting will be at 2 p.m. So 1:30, I think he wants to give a tour of the Rise apartment complex, and there will be food refreshment. And at 2 p.m. there will be a ribbon cutting.
So that's Friday next week. Okay.
Yes,
great.
Friday next week.
Thank you.
And then, oh yeah, sorry, that's all.
That's it?
Yes, yeah, that's it. Well said. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Judy DeShay.
Thank you. First, I want to make sure everybody knows that Henry Madej passed away earlier this month. He was a former president of the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association, founding member of the Committee on University and Community Relations. He was president of the West Hill Improvement Corporation, and just very active in the city on many issues, served on the Charter Commission, et cetera. And we passed a resolution honoring his life and legacy at the council meeting this past Monday. I thought it would be appropriate to make sure you all knew that. The USDO, our zoning code, has been rewritten and was voted out of the planning committee on Tuesday. There will be a hearing on it on November 1st, and it's to be voted on by the full council on December 6th, at our December 6th meeting. The USDO is about a 250-page document, and it has been completely reorganized, 50% reorganized, which has resulted in a lot of streamlining. There was a lot of duplication previously between Article 2 and Article 4, or Article 3 and Article 4, and I think that this makes it a lot more readable. We did a lot of work on providing clarifications, eliminating a lot of the ambiguities in it, and some of the issues that have arisen, taking care of some of the issues that have arisen in our 4 years of experience with this document. Some significant improvements are when the chief planning officer is asked for an interpretation that might have a binding effect on the future, and may point to an ambiguity that the Common Council might want to address in legislation, that there will be notice to the community in the same way that if there's a variance, and there will be notice to the Common Council, to neighbors, and then also for those of you who who sign up to receive a regular notice of any kinds of particular actions like variances, et cetera. And then there will be an opportunity to be heard before those decisions will be finalized. That also goes for when something is being declared a non-conforming use, which can have a big impact on some neighborhoods, and also for when there's new uses. There's a lot of improvements in terms of protection of neighborhoods, in terms of there's been some ambiguity between the heights. Some of the building heights are like 5.5 stories or 8.5 stories or 3.5 stories. Those have the half stories have been eliminated, and we've also added in essentially equivalent number of feet for the maximum height. So that should help everybody, developers and the public, understand more about what is expected. We've solidified things like ensuring that there's screening between 1-family and 2-family houses and resident and commercial districts or commercial properties, and also required a certain amount of setback, 100 feet if it's more than 3 stories up against a residential, an R1 district, 25 feet if it's up against an R2 district. So those are just some of the things. The memo, we just passed it out of committee. The memo summarizing the changes is being worked on and should be available hopefully by next Monday. I do want to note that as we struggled to deal with a lot of issues, there were some things that wound up being dropped out of this. One of the things we did deal with is there's a new law that allows non-medical marijuana to be sold for retail. We've included that in zoning districts for which the medical marijuana was available, but we did not expand on those areas because we felt like there's not enough time to really discuss. We think that there should be community input. So that's one of the issues that will be, the new council will be dealing with, is figuring out if there should be any expansion for retail use. And also, the law allows for on-site consumption. Now, we can opt out of that as a city. The Common Council is generally of the opinion that we should not be opting out of it, but that we should be figuring out where it's appropriate to allow on-site consumption. We don't have the ability to license them, but we do have the ability to establish setbacks from schools, churches, and figure out what zones would be appropriate to allow on-site consumption. Airbnbs, sidewalk cafes, signs, and affordable housing are other issues that we just felt like we couldn't get to while we were dealing with all the other issues in this significant change. I do feel that because this has been streamlined, because we took care of so many issues, some of those issues can be brought forward on a standalone basis and be dealt with a little bit more expeditiously, or a lot more expeditiously, depending upon what the sentiment is in the community. I do want to note that the Helderberg Neighborhood Association has been in touch with Tonko's office and other elected officials regarding their interest, our community, our neighborhood's interest in making sure that the post office remains at, on a permanent basis, back at 563 New Scotland Avenue. It will be temporarily located potentially as of early next week at the Rise. And the question is whether that winds up potentially being a permanent location for that. The general sentiment is the commitment was made to return it to 563 by the developer, and a lot of people did not oppose that particular development, partially because of those kinds of assurances, and because it's on a major thoroughfare, makes it easier, more accessible on bus. So the Common Council did pass and unanimously support and co-sponsor a resolution looking to have that return to 563 New Scotland Avenue. We will see what happens. There was supposed to be a meeting between Tonko and DeJoy or somebody on his staff high up to be discussing that today. So we'll see what happens with that. I do want to note that there are about 15 new positions in DGS to assist with some quality of life issues, including elimination of blight. We were talking tonight about the desire to take care of weeds in a lot of places, in addition to litter. So, you know, Clinton Avenue, South Swan, Morton Avenue, Quail in Ontario, in our neighborhood, some of the weeds are as tall as I am. So we want to be having the city be dealing with those kinds of issues. We are, Jay is going to be our arborist, and we will be bringing in a new forester, increasing the staff to deal with the city tree program, which I'm very excited about us making real commitment, increasing the funding for that as well. I do want to know, when it comes to senior services, one of the things I just noticed today in looking through our expenditures to date on our existing budget, because I like to look at where there might be outliers and whether that suggests some changes in our budget for 2022. There's actually $25,000 in a budget line item for senior services that is untouched. So I'm pleased to see that we're going to have at least a part-time coordinator for senior services in the city, and maybe that's an appropriate next step, and hopefully, you know, then move it to full-time at some point. But the fact that we have money in the budget for senior services, that the council has fought for it, but it's being untouched, is an indication that we really need somebody who is a point person for senior services. So I'm very pleased about that. Glad to take any questions. Maybe people know of something I should have touched on.
Well, I think we're running a little late tonight, so you may not get the questions you otherwise would have.
I don't have a question, but I just want to thank Judy for all her work with the USDO. Quite frankly, I think that many of you who were watching or you would have been proud of her. She was definitely on the ball and put a lot of time into the USDO. And, I want to thank her for that commitment and everything that she has done
Thanks,
regarding the USDO amendments. Yeah.
There's no other attorney that has looked at the entire product. So the city has gotten a lot of free legal services out of me serving on the council.
And we owe you. Thank you so much.
And I have to do that because that's my training, and I can't just adopt something without, checking and dotting the i's and crossing the t's and making sure the numbering's right and the citations as well as the substance. So I have a lot of confidence that this document is an improvement and that people will find it easier to deal with than the old document. And maybe that's just me because I've been working with it so much. So if anybody has any questions about that after the memo comes out, or has any issues that they want to talk to me about, please feel free to give me a call. Even after it's adopted, if you want to know something about what we changed, or glad, even after I'm off the council, I'm glad to answer those questions.
Thanks, Judy.
Let me
Do let us know when the memo comes out, if you could send me and Leah a copy if you think of it, but we'll be watching as well.
Before you continue, let me just jump in and say that, Judy, I do watch some of the council meetings once in a while, and each time that I log in to watch those meetings, I always see you or hear you speaking truth to power, whether you have to stand up to the mayor or stand up to your fellow members of the council. I see you always stand and represent the people that you are representing in the council. So I want to thank you for that, and thank you for all the work that you are doing for the people.
Well, thank you for that.
Okay, and you may not be here when we get back to our site issue. I gather that was included. We did speak with Brad about it, but the permanent temporary signs for rent 365 days a year. But time for that. And of course, we appreciate your service.
John, I've been in the city for 40 something years and always been involved. And I've told Brad that, if there's issues that he wants to bring me in on, because I know the USDO now, probably as well as Brad. And I think that, I like to be a creative problem solver, listening to the issues, coming up with the language and that kind of thing. So it would be nice to deal with that as a standalone issue as opposed to as part of this. So that ordinance does need some work. So glad to help out.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone. We've gone 2 hours, 13 minutes, and 50 seconds. So apologies, but it was a very interesting meeting, and I'm glad you could all join us. So we will see you at our meeting in November, our last meeting of 2021. And I can't think of the date, but it'll be the third Thursday at 7:00 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Right.